Welcome to another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. And now, your host, live from England, here she is. It's Deborah Ruffini.
Greetings from England. This is another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show. Today, I wish to enhance a little bit more about police corruption. And there's been a previous, I think, 2 or 3 broadcasts that have covered my own situation that's going on at the moment, very long-winded, in the hands of the IOPC that basically police the police. And there's been a few very recent incidents over here in England that are quite disturbing, really to do with the way that the police are dealing with, or rather not dealing with things in an appropriate manner. And I just think it's really quite serious stuff, and it's something I'm feeling more and more strongly about, especially when you can relate things back to what's happened to yourself. I think we do have a tendency to feel stronger about things that we can personally relate to because our emotions are involved and we know how horrible things feel. So I want to read a little thing that came up on the Facebook news feed a few days ago, and it says, cops are literally criminals. That's not an epithet or an insult, it's a plain description. Cops have the parasitic vocation and the lumpen outlook of gangsters, violently preying on civilians to build themselves up. That's their social and psychological character. It's their class. Now, as I've said before, I don't believe this is true of every police officer or member of police staff. I do feel for the good ones amongst the bad, that must be a horrible. I mean, it must be a very difficult job anyway, to have to deal with very frightening things they have to go into, not knowing what they may be faced with, annoying things they have to deal with, people calling them for no reason, and so I can imagine all round it's a very hard job to do. I wouldn't like it. On many levels, scary, frustrating, and I do feel for the good ones among the bad who are in a position. Well, they say if you're party to it, it makes you just as bad, but maybe to a degree. We can be in situations sometimes where we don't know what to do, where maybe it's not the right thing, but we fear for ourselves in the situation what may happen to us. So I completely get that. So it must be difficult if you have colleagues of bad cops where there's friendship involved or job at stake, and they feel they have to cover for their colleagues. That must be a hard position. Bad situation to be in. But also, I was touched quite recently with, also it must be difficult and embarrassing to have to say, I'm sorry that some of us behave that way. Recently there was a monthly Speak to Your Local Bobby, I think it's called, something like that. It's the community police. You can have the general public can go into the local community centre and have a chat with a police officer and, air your concerns, or and they must dread this. Bless them. They must think, oh crumbs, what are we going to be faced with now? We may have to be faced with what we have done. We may have to be faced with what we haven't done. We may have to be faced with what we're going to be blamed for that others have done. So they never know what. And they did look a bit like a rabbit facing a deer facing headlamps, whatever the saying is. So yeah, I went to see them, and I just I did say, although it's not your fault, it's not your doing, but this is the situation. And I said, what do you feel about? I was just intrigued by their response. What do we do about this? You can't take this case on. It's in, the hands of the powers that be. But just what do you think about this? And, do you feel this is okay? What I've described on the show fairly recently about myself being wrongly accused, but I won't go into all the detail because, I've mentioned this before, but in a nutshell, being falsely accused at the lies of a manipulative, narcissistic personality. And just simply saying to them that it is very dangerous when it's just tittle-tattle, and one person's word against another, and that person can be falsely accused. It's you got to have a lot more than just a liar running to the police. Tell her off for me. And then they don't look at anything and they say, oh, we've been told to tell you. I mean, it is laughable, but joking aside, it's dangerous, and I think that's one of the many reasons I feel deeply concerned about the way they operate, and I don't know what the policing system is like in the States. I can only speak about what it's like in Britain, but it's not good. They do, on the whole, have a bad name, and it's we tend to be quite scared of them. Well, as I've shared in more recent broadcasts, that you get to a point where you're numb and you're tired, and fear actually, as with any bully, when you've had enough of it and it's gone on for too long, the fear can actually significantly decrease, and that's the way I feel at the moment. But I think, I think generally, the general public, we're either creeping around them because we are scared, or we're either avoiding them because we're scared, or we think that there's no point in calling them because what are they going to do anyway? And there's lots of things that the police, again, I can only speak for over here in Britain, there's lots of things that the police don't want to get involved with that they would normally would have in the past normally considered quite important. The things like, I don't know, things like thefts or reporting a stolen bike or things like that, that they just, well, there's not much we can do, sorry. Whereas before they would actually try and find your stolen car or your stolen bike. They wouldn't just, we can't do much. And I think, again, like things like that gives them a bad name because they just shrug their shoulders and, we do need another body in operation. Lord knows what that would be, how that would be, what that would entail, but it's getting worse and there's got to be something that has to be done. Anyway, we're moving aside from the actual, injustice and unfair accusations side. But I was thinking the other day, I saw two of them in the town centre, and the ones over here don't tend to, on the whole, don't tend to carry guns. And I looked at these two and I thought, thank God they don't. I think they'd just be going around shooting anyone. Well, I'm slightly exaggerating, but I do think they'd be. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. I think they'd probably be more gun happy over here than perhaps what they are in other places of the world. They just walk around as if quite often they're muscle clad and they're full of tattoos. Not that there's anything wrong with tattoos, but they're certainly, look at me. They're quite look at me. I'm a big police officer, and I think if you looked at them the wrong way, they'd probably be tempted to pull out their gun. I'm sort of joking, but I'm serious when I say I'm glad the ones over here don't carry guns. I think that would make them even more more fearful to the general public than they are already. There was a recent situation. This happened, I think it was around Christmas time, Christmas just gone, of a lovely young lady. She's a 19-year-old lady, and she goes by the name of Harmony London. And she's a Christian girl, and she goes onto the street. She's busking. She's got her keyboard, her electric keyboard. She's playing the most beautiful some hymns, some modern day worship numbers, and she's got the most beautiful voice. She's very talented. And what's lovely about Harmony London is that she's not a street preacher, so she's not sort of, clad in sandwich board and going round telling people that if they don't submit to Christ, they're going to hell, or because some preachers can be, very attacking and judgmental and basically, judging our salvation status, and the only people that are saved are the ones that they happen to know about and everyone else is lost, sort of thing. That can very much be the attitude. But Harmony London, what's so brilliant about her is that she just goes out, sets up her keyboard, and she just sings. And people are drawn to Christ, to God, to our divine creator, through her passion and her singing and just touching people. And I think that's the way to win people for God. That's the ultimate way to win people for God. To just go out there and love. It's God's job to judge and it's our job to love. And Harmony London just goes out. She's clearly into her own music and getting carried away by the Spirit, and she's just giving that to the passers-by and those, listening. And so there's YouTube footage of what she's doing. She's touching many people, blessing many people. And on the whole, people are enjoying it because they know they're not being preached to. She's just a young girl, wanted to sing for us. She could be singing the alphabet, but obviously this has got more of a message. So she's singing and sharing her gift with us. And as buskers do, that go out and sing Bob Dylan numbers or whatever, But the police came and approached her, targeted her, picked on her, because she was singing, inverted commas, religious pieces and not within church grounds. And so I think she asked them she approached them, and from what I understand, she asked them if it was illegal then, if she was breaking the law. I think I've got this right. That is it illegal to sing her songs outside of church grounds, and of course that's, of course it's, of course it's not. But because the police officer realised that she didn't have a leg to stand on, and she just, accused her of something really, really silly, probably because she didn't like it. Maybe she was in a bad mood, or she didn't like the song, or she could have been of a different belief system. Her mature response was to poke her tongue out at this young lady. And it made the rounds on social media that, this is all she could do, rather than say, oh, actually, I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. Of course, you're not breaking any laws by singing your songs that people are actually enjoying, as with any other busker. But no, her rationale was to poke her tongue out. And she did it it was a very sort of vulgar manner as well. She was more or less sort of like displaying the tongue rather than it, poking it out. And it was just so silly, immature, and I'm sure there's lots of decent police officers that are sort of, holding their head in their hands. Oh, for goodness sake, what did you do that for? As if we haven't got a bad enough name, this one has to go and do that. So, so that's that's not helping matters. And there's been lots of situations like this, where they just haven't helped themselves, and they expect the general public to respect them and, put our trust in them. It ain't going to happen if they're doing things like this. This is being brought to the attention on social media. Another recent happening has been there's a brilliant podcast called Police Abusing Powers, where it's a gentleman raising concerns. And again, he's not, as with myself and the petition I have running in Britain to change things, not against the police, but against the corruption, against the misconduct. As I've said before, I say it again, we do need a police force, but we need an honest one and a sincere one, and one that operates fairly, and one that requires evidence before accusation. So he takes the same stand that this podcast is aimed at the misconduct and the corruption, and it's something that really must change. It's got to change. And there was a former police officer had phoned in, blasting him and saying, it's really disgusting what you're doing. How can you sleep at night? And there again, that was interesting, wasn't it? Because, and the podcaster was being really fair to him, but this former police officer was basically taking a stand against someone taking a stand against corruption. How on earth is that fair? And again, it was coming back to this whole thing of, as with my own situation, them not listening. If only they would listen and look at things, rather than, there's lots of people that do that actually, aren't there? That we can all think of those people that we've known or known of, that we've tried to have a conversation with, and they listen to what they think you're saying, or they've had a preconceived idea of what they believe you're saying, but they're not actually listening to what you truly are saying. And so their response has got nothing to do, or little to do, with what you're actually putting to them. We find that all the time on social media platforms. I mean, Facebook is rife with that in the comment section, So, so this guy phoned in and was having a real go at this man, and he had clearly been considering his own former position, where he'd probably had a rough time, a hard time, as any police officer must do. Again, it must be a very hard job. But rather than be kind and gentle about it and say, I agree with you, sir, but can you try and appreciate that us police officers are trying the best that we can do? But absolutely, I agree with you. The misconduct, we've got to sort this thing out because it's too rife. But no, it was just, how can you sleep at night? He clearly wasn't paying much attention to what was actually being said. And I think I was just looking at my own situation, really, and sort of, in the process, the misconduct kind of being highlighted as to how severe it is. We all make mistakes, but we must try and apologise or admit to error when we have made those mistakes, and certainly when it's concerning law enforcement. It's vital. It's not even a very, very good idea. It's vital. It is absolutely essential, because this is people's lives at stake. And but observing the sort of the psychological element of this, where they've got to get things right. And I think, so I was out with a friend just yesterday, and we were discussing, we had the same teacher, and she was, it very much looked as if she was in the teaching profession to be horrible to the minors. She was always, putting the kids down. We were about 7 at the time, and she'd it's as if she never really wanted any of the kids to do well. Well, she just enjoyed putting them down. And of course, at an impressionable age, you take that into adulthood, because at the time you don't know any different, and the grown-up is always right. So even if you can sense that there may be a little bit of abuse taking place, or there's something not quite right with this teacher, there's still that sense of that the teacher is always, that the adult is always right. So, and also add to that, teacher, she must be right then. They must be right then. And we were discussing a little bit, about this, the harm that this individual caused, and so, whether it's from someone who's teaching you, or a bullied kid that's bullied by other kids, by family members, or hurtful things that are putting you down, degrading things that are being said to you in the name of abuse. Sometimes, you need therapy to make you feel that you're actually okay, and they were the ones at fault. And that's why it's good to be gemmed up on what abusers do, what their tactics are, how they operate, what narcissistic personality disorder entails. And when you're a kid, you don't know any of these things. I think it should actually be a lesson at school. I think it should be taught. I don't know under what umbrella, but life skills and who to be wary of in adulthood. But so anyway, I was thinking about some of the things that teacher had said to me, and at the parents' open evening, and then getting a bit older, where you hit adolescence, and that's when children tend to notice differences, because the girls are supposed to look a certain way, and I think I've touched on this before, and you're supposed to you're out with your friends and you've got to try and impress them to keep in with the crowd, and you don't want to, fail your friends. So, you can become someone that or try and become someone that you're not. And so I'm thinking about sort of being on the receiving end of that, where at my expense, there were certain people, we've all had it, there were certain people trying to be like their mates and do things or say things to the individual that they wouldn't normally do if it was just them on their own. And so that can form you as a young person and take effect. So you can have, almost like you can have that first abuser that is maybe another kid or an adult to the kid, where you're told things or things have happened to you at an impressionable age during those formative years. And then what can happen when you get a bit older and form relationships is you can subconsciously look for bullies in your relationships. You can look for manipulators in those relationships. And possibly partly because you feel that you're not worthy of anything more. So you get into a relationship and they're also telling you you're this or you're that, and you can actually end up believing them because you've formerly been fed this much earlier on. So, this relationship kind of confirms what you were told when you were a nipper or a teenager. And then, of course, once the adult manipulator, and what doesn't necessarily mean relationships, it can also be within the family, any sorts of relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, friendship relationships. Then once you sort of, oh, sorry, I'm deserving of this, that gives them ammunition to do it even more. And then when you do eventually defend yourself, it's a matter of how dare you stand up to me. You're the naughty one because you stood up to me. It's my job to attack you. It's my job to manipulate and bully you. And hence going off, running to the police. Deborah did the right thing, but I don't like it because she stood up to me and I'm a narcissist. Anyway, we'll go on to that in a moment. But then you can have, so yes, actually no, we're going on to that. I thought there was a third before this one, but no, you can go on to the third abuser, who can be, we can call it the kind of prefect, the authoritative figure taking the side of the manipulator. So, and here's the danger of the police, or one of the dangers is, so you've received abuse in your former years, your impressionable years, that makes you believe that this future relationship you're now in, you've been deserving of, and then if they go running to the police telling a lie, all because they don't like how you've defended yourself from their manipulation, you've then got a third abuser in the police having a go at you and then not looking at your side of things. And that is really incredibly dangerous. Not just it's dangerous on an emotional level for, I don't like that word victim, but we'll use it for, so that we recognise who we're referring to, the person who's been on the receiving end. On an emotional level, it's distressing because, one, who else is there now to go to? The police are the top dogs. What can you do, further from them? But also, at this point, you've had enough. You've had it as a kid. You've had the confirmation that you're rubbish, you're useless, by the relationship that you've grown into and have formed. And now you've got the law enforcement, the ones that we should absolutely trust, saying, yeah, you are this, you are that, because the abuser said so. And, just on that level alone, it's dangerous. And you can understand there have been people that have been, probably those who have actually succeeded in taking their lives, but there have been those who have certainly been deeply affected and distressed and perhaps been suicidal on the very fact that the police are the ones, there's no one left to protect us now. We've had all this through various means all our lives, and now we've got the police against us just because, they're the police and they've just believed what they've been told and they can do what they want. And let's rewind on this one a bit. Going back to that couple that I saw in the town centre and observing them and just looking at them and thinking, and they were clearly sort of flaunting their peacock feathers, with the look at us, one of them was muscle clad and tattoo clad and walking around almost like the school bully, and it's just really interesting, the psychology, I think that can be involved in this on many an occasion. I do think there are children. They do say that behind every police officer, or many police officers, there either lies a school bully or the bullied child. And I think that's most likely to be true. And, you take sort of children that have been the bullies, or children that, what's even more dangerous than a bully that's, a bit of a inverted commas, thick yob, not much between the ears. What's more perhaps dangerous is a bright bully. A bright bully, a child bully, a bright one can be calculated. They can grow up to do great and dangerous things like become police officers. And I'm thinking of some of the kids that I was at school with that were bright kids and did very well. And, looking back, once in adulthood, once you realise what narcissism is and what it entails and what the traits are, looking back, I wonder, how many of those kids went into professions where they could perhaps flex narcissistic muscle and, be in authoritative positions. I remember Christy Parker, a toxic relationship expert who gives motivational speeches. She actually, it was her who educated me on what narcissistic personality disorder was, and it was just such an eye-opener, and that made sense about former partners and people that I had known in the past. We've all known them, perhaps not knowing what the condition is, but just, this doesn't make sense, what's going on here. But yeah, she she had said in one of the broadcasts that many narcissists go into professions like they become lawyers, and I'm trying to think. I don't know whether she mentioned the police force, but I remember her saying they become lawyers, and I thought that does make a lot of sense on a personal level. I've witnessed, that person going into that line of profession, tying it in with the nature of the person, and it just makes you wonder how many bright kids, how many bullies who have happened to have been bright kids have gone into the police force so that they can, not necessarily for the motive of serving and protecting, but wanting to bully. And I have to say that I do believe that the ones that are corrupt, not the ones that enter the force for a genuine purpose, but the ones that are corrupt, I would strongly believe that they were probably narcissistic children that had to operate their narcissism in adulthood somehow. And, when I received my phone call that I mentioned on a previous show from this officer, telling me that I should not have reported the child abuse that I was witness to, it made me very, very sad, and there's just something not quite right there. To not have said at any point, you were doing the right thing if this is what you witnessed, but to have told me off for reporting what I had witnessed is, I'm still absolutely flabbergasted by this. On the grounds that it was distressing for the abuser. Let's just think about that. That is, what on earth do we do about police officers who take this stand? Don't report a vulnerable person, a minor, don't report what's happened to them because you're being mean about the person who was inflicting the abuse. That is dangerous. It's not even funny anymore. It's dangerous. And what's really sad is that when that happened, part of me says, thank God I didn't, but at that time, prior to receiving that phone call, I was on the verge of bringing something to the attention of a school, a comprehensive school, regarding something that I knew was going on within that school at the hands of a teacher who was, we're not talking about physical abuse, we're talking about mental, emotional abuse. And there was a forum that the kids had, probably to support each other really, where they were saying about things where they had been affected by this person, and this person happened to be a former partner of mine who was doing the same sort of things to me. But I was an adult that could walk away. These were kids in the class where they couldn't walk away, and any underage person who's being manipulated, being attacked, being bullied, they need adult protection. We can't afford to just say, let's hope and pray that they're okay. No, we've got to step in, But you know, the sad thing is that after I received that phone call, I then backed down on raising what these poor kids were going through. The emotional put downs, the emotional attacks, because I was told on that phone call, if we receive any further complaints, you will be arrested. If we receive any further complaints, you will be arrested. So I've got to sit back and watch this happen, because it's naughty if we take a stand against child abuse. So I didn't actually go ahead and contact that school, because if that abuser who was doing this to the kids said, right, I don't like that, I'm entitled to treat my class how I want to, the bad person is the person who's raised this. I don't want to get the sack. I don't want the head coming to me, telling me that they've clocked that I've been doing all this. I'm going to run to the police. I'd get another phone call and a probable arrest. How on earth is this thing happening? How on earth? It's like a bad dream. How is this acceptable? How is this even in existence? That the police are telling us to not report child abuse. It's going to be upsetting for the people who are inflicting the abuse. We're living in a very dangerous society. And there's going to come a time when, it's happening already, but there is going to come a time very, very soon when the victims are going to be in danger. We already are, but I think it's going to go quite the reverse, where we're not going to be reporting things that definitely need reporting, because the witnesses of the abuse are going to get the slap on the wrists. We're going to get the arrests. And it is petrifying. And I can honestly say that if I were to witness anything else, if I were to, witness a break-in, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't do anything. And the police are their own worst enemy. It's a very sad state of affairs, and I don't know what the answer is. We just need people to keep raising awareness. We need people to keep taking a stand. And I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime that I'm going to see this change. I can do all these broadcasts and I can run all these petitions and hold these meet-up groups, but I can't do it on my own. And there is power in numbers, and I'm just hoping and praying that there will be something done at some point that will change all this, where things will be looked into more, where the police don't just believe lies that they've been told, and the police actually look into the accusations that are made from both victim and perpetrator. That the police would actually look into the accusation that I could have made about what these comprehensive school kids had been suffering at the hands of teacher, and that the police could have looked into the perpetrator of what that person was doing to the other person that was doing to the child. Looking into both sides, the victim. That's what I'm trying to say. The victim and the perpetrator. You need evidence. You need to look in fairly into both sides. And anyway, I just thought I would, share this really, because it's something that sort of keeps coming back. It doesn't go all the time. The situation's there. It's not going away, and it's we just need to do what we can in our small corner until our small corner becomes a massive corner and branches out to all four corners. Anyway, I trust this finds you well, and again, I thank you for tuning in, and until next time, lots of love and God bless.